Welcome back, Sons of Pitches. It's episode 19. We're back with a weekend review. We're going to start where we always start, in England, where we had a couple of good games. One really big game for the title race, but we will get to that later. But instead, we will start in Manchester with Patrick, who is here to talk about how United took on Everton this weekend and won 2-0 off two penalties from Rashford and Bruno, which is an interesting thing that they didn't have the same penalty taker take it twice, despite Bruno scoring the first one. But that being said, Patrick, I'll let you open the floor as you have the highest stake in this game. Tell us how you felt about the game overall.
Thanks. So I actually did not watch the game. I had to watch the extended highlights because I was not getting up this early. Went out Friday. So, however, I did see all 23 shots that Everton took on United, and I wanted to throw up. So, I mean, Onana got man of the match, rightfully so. Garnacho was actually like the first player to draw two penalties in a Premier League game for Manchester United. Something crazy like that, which was pretty dope. And I think maybe they were trying to get Rashford some confidence, Nate, to kind of answer your question why, because Rashford hasn't really been all that inclusive. But I mean, I don't think they played that good. I think they should have won because of all the chances that they had. But I mean, the penalties you got to give them. They're both clear penalties. Those are like the only real chances they had. Besides like a couple big shots, but I mean, I don't know. Bruno started at striker. If you guys didn't see the lineup and watch the highlights, so pretty embarrassing because Højlund's out, but he should be back for the FA Cup, thankfully. But just, I mean, ode to some of the players. I mean, Garnacho has been good all season. Dalot has been good. Varane has been exceptional when he's on the pitch, so I think they should at least give him an extension. And then Onana's kind of another clean sheet for him. I forgot what his save count was. 6 total saves, which is pretty big considering everybody clowns him all the time. But he's tied second for clean sheets. So mark my words, if he wins the Golden Glove, I don't want to hear anybody talk about Onana ever again. But I mean, yeah, overall, pretty sad to see Joe Garner on the other side of the pitch. Playing against us. I always liked them in the academy, so I guess they're looking at Branthwaite as well for a center back replacement, which is pretty cool to play against them. So, I'll turn it over to you guys. I mean, it was just typical win. They should have won the game, and they did. So, embarrassing defense though, shot wise.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the shots on against you guys because I think it's 50 the count in total in the last 2 games against you guys, which is just absurd. I mean, Ten Hag again after the game was saying United's back, this and that, all his hot air that he likes to blow. You guys know how I feel about that, but I have to give Onana his props. I thought he was really, really good in this game. He made a lot of good saves, and I think he's really been starting to show a little bit of confidence, and that's kind of rubbing off on the players around him. I think it's really... I know you guys aren't as strong defensively, but I think it's definitely helping that he's kind of been solid back there, and the defenders you guys have been feeling know that they have someone they can rely on now back there.
Yeah, it's I'm wondering, Pat, because obviously Højlund was getting into a bit of form before he got injured, right? But then obviously he gets injured, and now you have no one to even fill that role. I mean, you're forcing Bruno to play a striker role, which is obviously not his preferred position. In the summer, is that something you guys think you need, is a backup striker or a starting striker over Højlund? Do you think Højlund can carry the team going into next season as the only man up top?
So I was looking actually yesterday. They're on the market for a striker, a left back, and I think it was a right winger. So those are the 3 markets. I mean, we don't have another striker. Rashford really can't play striker anymore. He did a couple seasons ago. He can't play. Martial can't stay fit. And there's nobody else to play there. So I would like at least a striker. Maybe to even, like, if Ten Hag, or if he's still even the manager, if Ten Hag wants to play 2 striker, at least he'll have the availability to do so. rather than just playing he could play 4-3-3 or go down to 4-2-3-1 or whatever he wants to do. But I think we do need a striker, at least as a backup. I actually do like Hoyland. I think he holds the ball up really well. I think he's really coming into himself because you got to remember he's only 20 years old, so to pay a little bit of a price tag for him, he's not like a one of those players that's solidified. So it was a little scary purchase, but I think slow start, he's kind of getting rolling. And it also, like John Lucas said, the confidence around them. He's not going to go take 3-4 players on if he's going to turn around and pass the ball. Honda Herrera used to do it all the time in the team, waste chances because he wasn't confident enough on the ball. So I'm looking forward to buying a striker. I wonder who. I always see these stupid rumors all the time. I don't really follow any of them, so I would like one though to answer your question fully. And a left back, please, because now that Malacia is out to the end of the season, Shaw will be back in the last 2 games of the season. We don't even have a left back after they got rid of Reguilon, so Lindelof will play left back till the end of the season.
Would you want to bring in a starting striker or a backup to Hoyland? Is my follow up to that. Do you want to give Hoyland the starting number 9 position, or do you think he needs more time to grow?
I guess it just depends on who, though, right? Because I saw a report that they're trying to get Harry Kane. So obviously, if you buy Harry Kane, he's starting.
Right.
There's players that if you buy maybe 25, 26 years old, if they're it depends on how their output is. I would say if it's a player a caliber of a Harry Kane type of player that can do it all, then he's absolutely start. But if it's a bang average striker and they just need him as a backup, if they go and get a Cavani or an Igalo they did, those guys would be sitting for me, and I'd rather have somebody who's hold the ball up type of player. So I would like Hoyland to start just because he's so young. I feel like he needs to develop, he needs to play. So why pay 70, 65 mil and then bench him, for another striker? But
right.
Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, and then this loss sees Everton just struggling to climb after their deduction, despite their deduction reducing to climb away from that relegation zone, only be 4 points clear of Luton, who drew at the weekend but still had that game at hand. So an hypothetical 3 points puts them within 1 point of Everton. Nottingham also lost, who's in that little race to go into that relegation group. They lost at the weekend to Brighton, who are trying to get a little form after that dismantling by G's Roma in the Europa League this weekend. That brings us to our next big top title race, a team who's now in first place right now because of goal difference, equal on points to Liverpool. Arsenal win at the weekend ahead of their Champions League clash, which is playing as of time of recording. They won 2-1 to Brentford. We saw Ben White assist both of those goals. Arsenal keep that little good form that they're on right now. Not that 5 goals we've been seeing every single game. So maybe Ange had a little bit of his critiques were right. If you didn't catch that, make sure you watch that little video we put on social media. But as far as the game goes, how did you guys feel about this one?
Well, I'll go first and give Arsenal a little bit of props. I like the way Arsenal fight. I mean, it was. I don't think it was the cleanest of Arsenal's games, especially given how they've been performing the last couple of weeks and just scoring goals for fun. They were made to work for it by a Brentford side that are pretty strong. I think this Brentford side, honestly, you have a bunch of championship players, and the fact that they're even trying to fight for mid-table, I think is impressive personally. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of the same things from Arsenal. They really don't move away from their game plan that Arteta sets up well every week. I can't believe the player that Ben White has grown into. I think he's been quietly one of Arsenal's best players and kind of an unsung hero. I mean, it seems like he's popping up with an assist every week for a center back. I mean, he's technically playing out of position, and he has been the whole season. And it's not because they don't have fullbacks; it's because he's been keeping players out of the team. And I wanted to give a big shout out to Kai Havertz. I always liked Kai Havertz. I think I was one of the few people that I remember that actually thought his move to Arsenal was a smart one and a savvy one. I think the price was a lot at the time. It probably still hasn't been justified yet with the short. He's only been there a season, and I think a lot of people were questioning what role he would play. But I think Arteta has stuck him all everywhere. He's played him on the left. He's played him in the left side of the midfield trio, and He's been playing him through the middle, and he's been scoring goals. He's been providing. I think he's shown a lot of confidence, and I think it's something that we don't see too much in football. Usually, you only get one big money move, and when you don't succeed, your career tends to dwindle off from them. I think a lot of people thought, given his performances at Chelsea, that he wouldn't move for a fee anywhere close to what Arsenal paid for him. And it makes me think of somebody like Timo Werner. I mean, Timo Werner, moved for a similar fee, and his performances were far worse than Havertz, and his career kind of dwindled. And I think Havertz bounce back has been a breath of fresh air for his career, certainly moving to Arsenal. And I think he's actually been pretty reliable. So I don't know what you guys think of Havertz. It was a huge fee. I don't think it's been fully repaid yet. It's still pretty early in his Arsenal career, but so far, I think people are going to look back at this last couple weeks and look at the performances of Havertz, because he was the match winner on the weekend. So it was a big 3 points given the Liverpool City result.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a great move for him. It fits their play style, fits his play style much more. And
he's not asked to be like a true 9.
Exactly.
Right.
Play on his own.
Even when he does play in the 9, he isn't
Yeah.
really asked to do everything he's done at Chelsea.
100%.
Funny you bring up Werner too, because I think we see what the common denominator is, that that Chelsea was the issue rather than
Right.
either of those players, which is still pretty evident. But no, yeah, I think for this game specifically, I think it was a really good performance from Arsenal, even considering they had to fight for a bit longer than they've been used to get that goal. A really weird goal to concede with Ramsdale, definitely not something he would wants to do in his first chance back. But no, they showed a good fight. And yeah, Arsenal's getting performances from players that they wouldn't have necessarily expected. You definitely at the beginning of the season would not have expected Zinchenko and Jesus to be benched by choice, not necessarily through injury and stuff. So I find that pretty interesting that you're getting really good contributions from players like Trossard, Havertz, and Kivior, and even Ben White, like you mentioned, kind of playing out of position. He's been there for pretty much a year and a half, but he's made that right back position his own. No matter who is on the bench trying to pressure him out of it. So now, pretty good performance from them. They now, we'll touch on the other games, but they now hold that first place on their own in the league. So we'll see how it goes for them.
Yeah. One thing that happened in this game that I think is important to talk about, because it was the conversation of the Premier League after the transfer window when Arteta went and got Raya, and we were talking about who was going to be Arsenal's number 1 and switching back and forth. And Ramsdale had just I think a poor account of himself, especially with that Wissa goal right before halftime, where it just did not get the ball, just not clear the ball well at all, couldn't get it out of his feet. And Wissa obviously with a bit of determination to get that ball and deflect it into the back of the net. It's a bit embarrassing. Obviously, people say Raya is a better goalkeeper at his feet, and that obviously shows it pretty clearly. Not to say Ramsdale had an awful game, but it's you have to feel for him a little bit, even though he didn't do himself any justice there, because it's just a bit unfortunate. But gee, I'm sure you're gonna want to weigh in on that.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I put all the blame on that Ramsdale mistake on Arteta and nobody else, because the only reason Ramsdale makes that mistake in the first place, in my opinion, is he's not game sharp, because he's been riding the bench for the last 3 months. If he's been playing, if he's been getting cup games here and there, which he hasn't for some reason, if you have 2 goalkeepers, why not rotate him? He hasn't been doing that. I don't know. It really blows my mind. But Ramsdale's not match fit, and that's the only way to explain how he makes a mistake like that. He's just not, his timing isn't there. In terms of shot stopping, I think he did great. I think he made a lot of great saves. That save he had on that effort from Ivan Toney from halfway on the half volley, that was an unbelievable save. And I'll tell you right now, that's a save that David Raya is never making. So I think it's hard. Obviously, you have to blame Ramsdale. It's his mistake. But I think Arteta needs to shoulder a lot of that blame, because the only person that I think it falls on is him.
Yeah, you mentioned that, because he wanted to substitute the goalies and make that a thing, and said he would if it was acceptable, and then he goes and doesn't rotate his keepers in cup games like everybody else. So
have 2 number 1s, and that was his whole logic, was to have 2 number 1s. But now you're not playing your 2 number 1s. So what's the point?
Yeah, Ramsdale hasn't seen the field since Liverpool in January 7th, so that's a long time to be out. I mean, yeah, you're practicing day in, day out, but it's nothing like getting game experience. And it's just unfortunate because, yeah, like you said, G, I agree that I think it, like, obviously it's his fault he doesn't clear it, but he's just not used to the speed and of the pressure because you're not getting that kind of pressure on the training ground. But yeah, at the same time, I think if Arteta wants to have two game sharp number ones, he's got to rotate him more, and he does not do that at all. If we have nothing else, go ahead.
Let me weigh in, please. The one thing that kind of disrupts me about the Ben White situation is like Tomiyasu was playing like so good, and then like Ben White comes in, and so now when Tomiyasu comes back, like Arteta's got a decision to make, which is going to be tough, I think. But and to echo your Havertz kind of shout, I was excited for him to leave Chelsea because I actually like him, and I didn't think he was really that bad. I think he just played bad. Kind of same thing I felt with Mason Mount, but he's actually ass. But Havertz is playing pretty good. He suits the style perfectly, like Jason said. He's that he can play the 9. He could like drops into false. He could play center mid. I don't know. He's perfect for the system, I think, and he goes and wins. Trossard, unbelievable pickup. I mean, Brentford could have won this game, honestly, because besides just Tony's halfway effort, they had the header that Ramsdale made 2 huge saves in this game. So he did let in the goal, which, I disagree. I think it's entirely his fault because if you get started and you need to start performing and you want to fight for the number 1, you can't make a mistake like that. That's my take, but I'm not a keeper, so. But Wisa, I mean, he underestimated Wisa's speed so much. It was like unreal. He got to that ball so fast. I almost think Gabriel played him, kind of did him dirty. I feel like Wissa kind of read the pass, and Gabriel even passed it to him. Ramsdale should just be one touch in that anyway. But Arsenal has been impressive, so I'm excited to see if they can kind of hold their percentage went up to win the league by like 5%. So everybody still has City winning, but it's going to be an actual real title race now.
It's funny you say the one touch thing, Pat, because if anything, I also think, I mean, I guess I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate, but Ramsdale knows that, everybody in the media talks about how Raya is good with his feet. So in his head, he's like, oh, I need to show that I can touch this here and then play a ball rather than, no nonsense clearing it. So it probably gets in his head, which slows down his whole reaction to that play.
Another thing, goalkeepers they don't want you playing one touch anymore and just kicking the ball away. They want you to take a touch and find a pass short and allow the team to build out from the back. And I think that's another reason why you're seeing so many goalkeepers get caught with the ball at their feet in situations like this, because they're instructed to take their time and to find a pass. If it was me, bro, I'm kicking that shit as far away as I can get it from my goal because I just don't want it.
We know.
You can't
play possession with John.
It would have went right out of touch too.
But shit, I would have got it right away. So I just think sometimes I think they get caught in the mindset of they have to play it short all the time. And
they used to do the same thing to De Gea. They used to play the ball to De Gea, and everybody used to sprint at him. He used to give the ball away, and we concede all the time. Now they can't press Onana because he's a great passer. So the passing at the feet is. You got to have both the shot stopping and the passing because they take advantage of the non-passers like they did in this game.
You do, but I think a lot of goalkeepers have a hard time deciding when it is right to play out from the back and when to just get the hell out of there.
Yeah, wait till you guys hear what John Luke has to say about Ederson later.
I'm actually excited for that conversation. That being said, we'll move on to the next game in London where we had Spurs destroy and dismantle Villa 4-0. Heung-Min Son with 3 direct goal contributions. It was a big game. Timo Werner, who we mentioned in the Kai Havertz conversation, also got a goal. So clearly the problem is not being in London. It's what team you are playing for in London because both players are performing pretty well this season despite having poor last stints in the Premier League. But as far as this game goes, Tottenham still proved that without their old talisman Kane, they can still score a lot of goals. They can still contest, sitting now 5th and climbing in the Premier League with a goal at hand. But this game specifically, how did you guys feel about it?
Well, I don't know if you guys watched the game, but I think if you had watched the first 45, you would have been absolutely shocked to see the final scoreline be 4-0. I mean, Spurs were absolutely dominated in the first half by Villa. Villa Park so far this season. Hasn't really been an easy place to go. Obviously, they beat City, they beat Arsenal. They had some wonderful results at Villa Park so far this season, and it looked like it was shaping up to be that again, to be honest. I don't know if you guys saw, but I mean, Villa themselves could have been 2-3-0 up at halftime. They're unable to convert, and then all of a sudden, everything just got away from them so fast. Madison got the opening goal on a break. It was quickly made 2-0, and then John McGinn. I don't know if you guys have seen the challenge. I don't know if he meant it. It's hard to argue that he didn't mean it. I don't know if he lost his head, but he absolutely smashed young Udogi to break up a counterattack. It was a straight red card challenge, and from there, Villa was never going to get back in the game. But my takeaway from it was just, damn, that sucks, because I thought Villa was going to win the game, to be honest, after the first 45. And had they done so, they would have opened up a nice gap between themselves and Spurs. And now they've left the back door open. It's a 2-point gap, and Spurs have a game at hand. So it was not a result that I expected. At least it's not a scoreline I expected after the opening 45. It was a roller coaster game.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say specifically on that McGinn challenge. I don't know if you saw it. Right after, you see Konsa in one of the screens telling his captain John McGinn to use his head and calm down during that challenge.
I mean, McGinn was confused when the referee pulled the red card out. He was like, he had no idea that it was anywhere close to a red card challenge. And I mean, fair enough. I'm sure he didn't try to absolutely clear Udogi. It did look like he was making an attempt to play the ball, but when you miss the ball so much,
so reckless.
I mean, all the Spurs players immediately surrounded McGinn and thought that it was malicious. It definitely looked malicious in live time. Yeah. It was nuts.
But I think that's literally just the proof that they're not a team or a squad that is prepared to be in this situation. They don't have the leadership when your own captain is not able to stay in the field in a big game like that. And if it's one thing for a tactical foul or something like that, and you second yellow, that's one thing. But for something reckless like that, that's all the proof you need that they're way too high for what their squad is capable of. They're definitely talented, but they're missing that one piece that would allow them to stay there.
It honestly reminded me of some of the Arsenal squads before when they were a couple pieces away, and Xhaka would just absolutely clear somebody.
Absolutely.
Flick off his home fans and get sent off. I mean, that's literally all I was thinking. That was a great point you made. And about
funnily enough, under Emery.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. It was crazy.
But I thought you were right, Ange. I think the scoreline is really flattering for Spurs. I felt like Villa were so good in the first half, but I think they just ran out of gas. I think that playing midweek in Ajax and coming back and having to play again in such a short rebound, I think it really had an effect in the second half. I think that Villa just ran out of gas, and I think that's the only way really to describe it. I mean, even just the body language of the players. I mean, they would lose a 50-50 challenge, and some of the players would give up. I think it was the fourth or third goal that Tottenham scored towards the end, where a couple players, I think it was Zaniolo, just gives up. And if Zaniolo was still playing for Roma, I would be punching the TV screen if I saw that happen, regardless of what the scoreline was. So I think that you guys are spot on with the mentality too, that they're just not there yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to say the least. Villa, who have done so well to be in the top four as they are right now, but obviously it's just we've talked about a dozen times about different clubs who just don't have the depth to play twice a week in Europe, and that dismantles a lot of seasons, and obviously that showed very evidently in this game, particularly in the second half. Another big game at the weekend too. We did see Chelsea squeak 3 points away to Newcastle to keep their little ball rolling a little bit. They're trying to climb the table. Actually, it was looking, interestingly enough, Pat wouldn't like this table too much, but with all the data that we have in modern football and stuff, we do have XG tables where based on the expected goals for and against in each game, you can kind of get a sense of if a team on paper deserved or didn't deserve to win a game. Chelsea actually would sit fifth this season, so you can almost argue there's a little bit of unluckiness there, but obviously there's more to just that. United actually would sit 12th, Pat, so I wouldn't check that out if I were you. But so that was an interesting one to say the least. But the showpiece game of the weekend where we had a little bit of drama too, and then of course Ederson goes out with injury, so that might derail Man City for a couple of games. But we did have City host Liverpool host City this where they duked out a 1-1 draw. Gave Arsenal the opportunity, since they shared the points, to go top of the table. So this is a huge game. How did you guys feel about this one?
I think City got away with one, personally. I thought Liverpool had more of the quality chances in this game. There was a period where I think it was Luis Diaz. I mean, he could have scored a hat trick. He was in on goal a couple times in the 1v1s, and even Darwin Nunez kind of missed a gilt-edged chance. And I'm really wondering if Liverpool is going to look back at this game and have some regrets. We're obviously going to get into the penalty controversy as we talk about the game, but in my opinion, I don't think Liverpool fans can be hanging their hat on a referee's decision in the game where they're at home, and I really thought they should have scored. I mean, the only thing I was thinking the whole time is, wow, I mean, if this was a Sadio Mane team, I think Liverpool might have won 4-5-1. I mean, I hate to say that. I really like Luis Diaz. He's a proper winger. He's full of confidence every time he plays. He doesn't care who's in front of him. He'll run right at you. He'll even run through you sometimes. And it was just, I felt so bad for him. I think, I'm sure he would have had trouble sleeping because he missed some great chances. But as a neutral, I was kind of let down, to be honest. I mean, apart from the chances, the goals kind of sucked. I mean, City had kind of a moment of genius. It was a cool little set-piece routine. Ake setting a pick on McAllister and the John Stones near-post run. They kind of did a corner taking quickly to Liverpool, and then Liverpool obviously responded from the spot. So I was a little let down. I was hoping for a Premier League classic thriller, but there was certainly a lot of drama.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately didn't get to watch it live, so I kind of watched a little bit on catch up and in the highlights. But if you watch the highlights, especially in the second half, every other clip for a good 20-minute stretch of the game is just somebody smashing the post. So the amount of opportunities missed in this game was crazy. And yeah, I think I would probably agree that I think City definitely got away with one. Where Liverpool, I think, in the former teams, like you mentioned, like a Mane and a Salah team, they're scoring 3 or 4 goals in this game.
Could have been wrapped up at halftime, to be honest.
Exactly. So I think it's probably a bit of changing of the guard for Liverpool, where these are the games that they would have definitely won with the old squad. But I think it was still an impressive performance from them. They proved they belong, and shout out Kelleher, still looks amazing. It doesn't look like a big step down from Alisson, which I don't think we can say the same on the other side when Ortega came in for Ederson. It was definitely, as a neutral, really disappointing.
Joe, before you go into your goalkeeper stuff, let me jump in front of you. My man of the match for the game, Endo, pocketed De Bruyne and pocketed Bernardo Silva the whole game. I promise. He is fantastic. I don't know if you guys remember how much they paid for him. It was like, what, 16, 17 mil?
Was the fee, yeah.
You got to be joking me to go. Everybody calls De Bruyne, the greatest cam in Prem history, and he just got pocketed by somebody who's worth £17 million. So, fantastic performance from Liverpool. They should have easily won this game. They should be ashamed of themselves, truly. Luis Diaz especially. I mean, Andrew, you said it best. He had a one-on-one. He skied.
It was bad. The one-on-one was awful. It's not even close to making Ederson think about it. It was bad.
I don't know if you guys remember that one-on-one that Lacazette had a couple years ago. They quoted his tweet and then put Lacazette's one-on-one, and it was like the same exact shot. Like, it went into the stands. It was pretty funny. Yeah. And then the ball, perfect ball from Salah, and oh my God, it was just pitiful. He came on and changed the entire game for them too. It's just shameful to see. I mean, I'm not a big Klopp guy. I can't really honestly stand him. But I mean, if he goes out on his shield, it'd be cool to see. But quite frankly, I'm glad they drew because both of them didn't deserve to win. If Liverpool don't want to take their chances, and City looked like garbage in the second half, so it was very lackluster, like Jason said.
Yeah, I also it's funny too because I know we're talking about how there's a lot of open play misses from a lot of these Liverpool forwards, and they should kind of be having their heads down after that one. But there was, they did score on a penalty, but there was probably what 2, 3 other shouts for a penalty. Obviously, one of the last few minutes from Doku gets McAllister in the chest with his cleats. So I'm surprised. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on how VAR didn't intervene at all with those decisions. But there was if some of them were 50-50, some of them look clear cut to me in terms of penalty shouts. I don't know if you guys had thoughts on that one.
I agree, we'll talk about the penalty that was called because I do think there's a debate to be had, and I know Gianluca. We were speaking before the pod, and he said that he wanted to make a couple points on Ederson coming out. Now the penalty that was called, obviously, it was kind of a hospital pass from Nathan Ake. No debate, it's a clear penalty. I felt really bad for Ederson, but Gianluca kind of had an interesting take, and he kind of was placing more of the blame on Ederson than Ake, and I was kind of disagreeing. What did you think of the penalty, John?
Well, yeah, you're right. It's definitely I do think more of the blame is on Ake. The pass is horrendous. I mean, it's a hospital pass, the definition of one. But my question about Ederson is he knows he's going to get beat into that ball by Darwin. Darwin's a much faster player covering ground. He's going to get there 9 times out of 10. Why doesn't Ederson go with his hands? He can touch the ball with his hands. He's a goalkeeper. He can go with his hands and slide. I think he's got a much better chance of getting to the ball first, or at least making contact with the ball and not conceding a penalty if he goes for it with his hands rather than just trying to swipe at it with a kick. I don't know what you guys think, but that's my take on it. I really, if it was me personally, I would have gone to ground there. I wouldn't have done what he had done there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, we know everybody talks about how Ederson is like a ball-playing goalkeeper, and it's almost like he's just fully adopting that now and just refuses to use his hands at that point. But you have a point, Gia, because I mean, when the ball's in the box, like how many times have you just seen a keeper just wrap his whole body, his arms around the legs of the opponent, but he has the ball in there and that's clean. You know what I mean? It's like a football tackle, but the ball's in his arms. So it's surprising to me that he doesn't do that. I think you're completely valid for making that point. Jay, I don't know what you were going to make on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a tough one because I mean you're also caught in the mind of the pass back and it's always a tough situation because you could see the second the pass came he was already pissed that pass even happened. Yeah. So I think mentally he's already set off.
The one thing I was going to ask you guys about the penalty was like I didn't get to talk about the John McGinn one. I thought maybe it was a little harsh, but Ederson sweeps his entire foot at Nunez trying to get this ball.
Like how he should have been red.
Like how does he not get a red for swinging his foot? Like if you guys really watch it, like Nunez took a way bigger fall than Udogie did, and Udogie got right up and was like, "Are you guys serious?" And then played it on the floor, which is fine. Right. But I don't know. I mean, I felt like. I agree with Gianluca. I mean, how do you not, go with your face or at least slide like at the ball, not like to the player? Like the angle he took was terrible.
He almost had no shot the way he went.
Literally, he looked like he wanted to kick Nunez. I think personally,
you can tell by his body language. He's got no intention of going to ground at all.
Yeah, it's like he didn't care about the ball. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like if McGinn's penalty, red card is a red, then. If this is an open field, is this not a red card? Like the sweep of the foot, it's kind of reckless to me. But I just wanted to put that on you guys.
Is that not double jeopardy though? Is that like not a thing? That's why he doesn't get the red. Maybe. Do you know what I mean? Like
also
can't give a penalty.
It's in the box, they give him a goal.
Yeah. Right, like because you're giving the penalty, you can't give the red. So like if Ederson makes that challenge outside the box, it's an automatic red. Do you know what I mean? Unless I might be mistaken, but I think that's how that.
I think you're right, Nate.
Just to answer that question.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm with you, Pat. But
I know this doesn't play into any refereeing decisions, but there was already salt in the wounds on top of the penalty conceded because now obviously Ederson is hurt and he was hurt right away. To be honest, I was a little surprised he stayed on the field for the penalty. I thought that was kind of stupid, in my opinion. Maybe the adrenaline was still kicking in, and he wasn't quite sure if he was injured yet, but. I thought that was kind of bad management, even from Man City's staff. I mean, it was very apparent that something was bothering him as soon as he made the challenge. He was kind of standing around, feeling around his groin, and kind of bending his knees a couple times to see and check on his wounds to see if he was okay. I thought it was kind of stupid, to be honest, that they even had him in net. That being said, it was an expertly taken penalty from McAllister, a player who, along with Endo, like Patrick said, I'm glad you shouted them out because, I mean, they were huge reasons, in my opinion, why Liverpool not only dominated this game, but made City kind of quiet. I mean, in midfield, there wasn't this kind of back and forth play in and around Liverpool's final third that you usually see from City. But yeah, unfortunate for Ederson. But yeah, I think the overall consensus is that we all kind of feel that City might have gotten away with one. Especially, we can talk about the biggest controversy of them all now with the Doku penalty shout. I know I had said before recording, I think it. I'm going to be honest. I think it should have been a penalty. I think they got it absolutely wrong. I don't know if it was a heat of the moment thing, big decision right at the end of the game, title implications, all these things play in to the referee's mind and VAR's mind. I think it was a penalty, and I honestly think it's a disgrace that it wasn't given. I thought it was terrible.
See, for me, I don't want that to be a penalty, but given how, like, I know for a long time, I remember vividly one time, like as a kid watching United play, and Nani puts his leg up to kind of bring a ball down and puts his studs right into somebody's chest, even though he never looked at him, and he got a straight red. So I mean, that's always something I always found harsh, but there's precedent that it's always been given. So I've always been. I never liked it, but I feel like it was soft to me. I wouldn't want that to be a penalty, especially one that decides the game. Which again, you shouldn't let that come into your decision making for that.
Arbitrary.
But I think I'm good. I'm good with the no call. I mean, especially if you take everything into account, it's a tie game. End of the game. If you take everything into account, I think it's fair. But again, you shouldn't be taking that into account.
Yeah, and it is probably product of me watching it over and over in slow-mo and having been seeing it a bunch of times. I think what I will say is I'm surprised it wasn't given after looking at it a bunch of times. So, I mean, I hope this doesn't sound contradictory, but I think if it was given on the field, it would have been hard to overturn. Yeah. And the fact that it wasn't given on field, it was hard to prove that it should have been given. Okay. It was one of those calls in the gray area. But I know there was a ton of debate on social media. Would you guys think, John, Patrick, and Nate? I'm curious.
I actually, overall, like throughout the whole game, I want to say I thought it was actually kind of refreshing that the VAR let the referee officiate the game. Like this Doku incident is a perfect example. He made the call on the field. He didn't think it was a penalty, and VAR stuck with that decision. I think that's how it should work every time, and I think that this game should be a perfect example of that.
Okay, nice.
I don't know if you guys saw the transcript that they read from the VAR room. Did any of you guys see it?
No.
So Dale Johnson, who was in the room for VAR, pulled up the quote because I knew it, but I wanted to actually read it to you guys. So he says to the ref, Michael Oliver, right on the field, that the ball touches the body of McAllister first before Doku gets his foot to it with contact, then on the opponent's chest. There are clear grounds for this to be a penalty. So Michael Oliver was basically like, I'm not going to look at it. That's like, so the VAR was like, hey, come look at it. This is probably a penalty. And Michael Oliver was like, nah, I'm good.
But again, the point of VAR is to correct obvious mistakes. And if Michael Oliver is clear as day, he knows what he saw, and what they're telling him is still what he saw, even though they think it's a penalty, he has every right, and he should just forget about it.
How it was,
Yeah, I thought it was refreshing that they did that in this game. It certainly hasn't been the case at all in the Premier League this season.
It was the perfect ending
across Europe.
They give the goal, it's like, look at all the chances Liverpool missed. Now they get fucking awarded a penalty for Klopp's last season. Here you go.
Yeah. There's always going to be controversy with whatever would happen. Yeah.
I got one more quick thing on this before we move on.
Fucking game off.
I think this was another case of Guardiola overthinking it again, because because Guardiola and Ruben Diaz have played almost every game, and then he went and changed it up again. So I mean, this is a very smaller change, but on par with him blowing big games, where I don't think there was a need to kind of change that up at all.
Yeah, and maybe it explains why City was kind of so open at the back. Honestly, for large parts of the game.
I think the openness at the back has just been the story of their season. I've been saying it right along. I think this is exactly how they played every game, and it just happens that they played a good team. And just like I said, they were going to struggle, and they did. I think I saw it coming clear as day. I could have told you that was going to happen before the game started.
Yeah, I don't think this formation with the three center backs where the wide center backs still act as fullbacks, and you have a center back in midfield. It doesn't work against good teams.
So
It destroys the smaller teams.
So let me ask the question to the group, and we'll wrap up the talk of Liverpool City. What's this result mean for Liverpool, for City, and for Arsenal, who of course weren't involved but were directly impacted, who now sit in first place? Do we have a new favorite? Are Arsenal the favorites, or are you guys with me and still believe that they're not going to get the job done? It'll be one of Liverpool or City. What do we think off the back of this result?
For me personally, nothing changes until Man City, Arsenal play each other at the end of this month. I think we'll have more of an idea then.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I've now changed which direction I lean, and I probably put Man City in third out of the three of them.
Wow.
I think Liverpool has shown that they can compete, and they are better than them on their day. Arsenal are flying, and I think City really blew their chance of cementing themselves there, because I think City is the most susceptible to turn up to a Burnley and just drawing 0-0. Like they do that every year, and I feel like the other two are just they're in a better run of form, and I think this game really kind of hurt City more than just losing 2 points.
Gotcha.
I don't really want to give a take, but if I had to pick,
Because you don't want any of them to win.
yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Villa win the league if it was up to me. So, I don't know. I'm gonna hold my tongue. I'm not gonna actually give my opinion. I'm gonna stick to my City shout just cause.
I somewhat agree with Jay in terms of City look like they may finish third of these three, but for a little bit different reason. I know I mentioned in the group chat, and this might be really easy to say, but with Ederson injured for what is as of right now 4 weeks, a good month. That's at least 4 fixtures in the Premier League. I'm not off the top of my head. I don't know what those are for City, but City, like G has been saying, have been a little bit leaky in the back, and Ederson has had to face a lot of shots. And people say Ederson's not the best shot stopper, but obviously he makes great saves. He's still a world-class keeper. And obviously we've seen the likes of number twos like Kelleher perform really, really well for Liverpool. Liverpool, I think, concede less shots than City, in my opinion, just from an eye test, not really from a stats point of view. But I just don't know if Ortega will be able to handle a somewhat leakier City defense in what could be a really key point in this game. And it'll be depending on if Ederson comes back for that Arsenal game, because Arsenal obviously have been flying, putting a lot of pressure on the opposition defense. So it's going to be a lot of how this month without Ederson pans out for City, because if they start conceding silly goals because Ortega is not ready to take on that number one spot for this lengthy spell of time, then City are going to drop points, and then it's going to be who has the best 4 weeks between Arsenal and Liverpool as they duke out their matches. So I think it's all to play for. It's cracked wide open. I think a couple weeks ago we wouldn't have said it as close as it is right now. But it's all to play for now, depending on how
you touched on Ortega, Nate. I was gonna say I actually think Ortega blows, but he made some pretty good saves, dude.
Yeah.
He single-handedly got them the point, because by the time he came on, they were fucked, and he actually had a pretty good second half. He had 4 or 5 saves, and he saved them. I think I'm interested to see how he plays, because I always thought he sucked. So now I kind of changed my mind after watching him get subbed in. I told my brother, we were watching the game, and I was like, yeah, Liverpool won, it's over, Ortega's coming in. Then he's pulling saves out, and I was like, all right, well, maybe it's not over. So I think you make a good point, though. It's going to be the battle of the goalkeepers the last, I think, month or so.
Yeah, because I agree with you. From my opinion, Ortega is just not the best keeper. I mean, he's one of those keepers that spend their career as a number 2. I've had this conversation in a couple other group chats, and they stand by Ortega being. I mean, I do have a City fan in that group chat, but I don't know. I don't think he's going to be good enough to handle. Now I'm curious. I'm just going to quickly see what City have for the next couple fixtures. They have Brighton we know can have a really good game. Then they play Arsenal right after that in about 2 weeks' time. So it's prospected right now that Ederson doesn't come out for 4 weeks, so that means Ortega is almost 100% guaranteed to start that game. And then if Arsenal can keep this form, that's going to be a misery. I don't know if you have any thoughts about Ortega or this
Yeah, I think
goalkeeper
you guys are
discussion.
disrespecting him like crazy. I don't
Really?
think he's a bad goalkeeper by any
I'm not
means.
saying he's bad. I
know. I think he's a
I'm
lot
saying
better
he's
than you
bad.
guys are giving him credit for. I'll say that. I think Ortega is he'll be fine back there. He showed that in the 30 minutes that he played against Liverpool. I think if you can step in like that in that moment and not miss a beat, I think you'll be more than fine. I think
Gianluca,
Ortega,
let me ask you a question. Where did Ortega play before he came to City?
I don't know, but I can tell you from
Yeah.
what I don't.
Armenian Bielefeld.
He
I
fucking
don't,
sucked.
but that doesn't matter to me that where he played before. It matters to me that when he comes in and he plays, he makes the stops and he answers the question. He did that every
Correct.
time against Liverpool. You can't
Correct.
ask for much more from a goalkeeper. So
Yep.
I think he's going to be fine. I think if anything is to blame over City losing the league, it's going to be the mistakes that happen in front of Ortega. Like it's not going to be all on him. It's really not.
That's
I
fair.
think that's outrageous to say that it's going to be up to Ortega to make the difference. I don't think so.
But I do think he is the worst of the number twos in that three-way title fight.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with that.
yeah, I mean, that's a tough one because Arsenal basically have 2-1s, and then Kelleher has been standing on his head these last couple of games. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel what you're saying. I understand. But that just wraps about Premier League. We'll now move to Italy, where we typically hanged off our conversation to the Italianos. I know in the notes here, we have a couple of conversations to have about coaches and some big results at the weekend. So I'll hand it over to Angelo and Gianluca to run us through the Serie A this weekend.
Yeah, so I wanted to start off before we get into any of the games. There was a couple managerial departures this weekend, both funny in their own right. I don't know. I wish I should have Googled it, but it feels like half of the teams have switched coaches in the Serie A so far. It's only March. It's match day 28. I think we got 10 games to go still. It's been absolutely crazy, as dramatic as ever. But yeah, the first this weekend of the departures was actually a sacking. Typical Serie A fashion. We saw Lecce head coach Roberto De Versa headbutt striker Thomas Henry from Hellas Verona after the final whistle. Both shown a red card. And then Roberto De Versa was shown the door pretty immediately after the game by Lecce's ownership, which is kind of a shame. Lecce surprised a lot of people, including myself. I thought they were going to go straight back down, personally, when they came up from the Serie B last season. There's a lot of fun players in this Lecce team, but it'll be interesting to see who they bring in as head coach, because they actually had some decent momentum. By all accounts, right now they should be safe. Actually, that was a lie. I didn't even know they were that far down. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a dogfight at the bottom of the table. I thought they were above Verona, but Verona obviously beat them 1-0, which sparked all the scenes at the end. So it was a tough result. They're now without a coach. We'll see what happens, but I don't think they'll be spiraling out of control. There's more quality in this Lecce side than the teams around them.
To give you a little credit,
What do
Ange.
you think, John?
Oh, I was just going to say, to give you a little credit, Ange, I just looked quickly. Lecce have only got 1 point in their last 5, so a couple weeks ago you would have been right that they probably weren't too close to that relegation zone, but they've dug themselves a bit of a hole.
Yeah, they've been kind of struggling.
Had a lot of
But
injuries too.
My favorite thing about the whole De Versa situation was, I don't know if you saw this, Ange, but after the game, he said that his reasoning for doing it was he was repeatedly provoked by Thomas Henry throughout the whole game. I don't know what a player could ever do to repeatedly provoke a manager to the point where he feels the need to headbutt him, but I just think that it's crazy. I mean, he certainly didn't back down. He doubled down on it, and he got the sack for it, but I don't think you would see that happen anywhere else but Serie A. What scenes at the end of that game? It was just classic.
Yeah, it was wild. And then the other departure was Maurizio Sarri, and I think the writing was on the wall. It's something we've talked about the past couple podcasts. It's now 5 straight losses in the Serie A, all surrounding a win against Bayern Munich. Another typical Serie A happening, in my opinion. Just wild scenes. But yeah, like I said, the writing was on the wall. Lazio owner Claudio Lotito has never been an easy guy to deal with. He's one of Serie A's more tough characters that they have, and I think the relationship was fractured kind of going into the season. There was always some subtle shots in the media from Sarri and Claudio Lotito. I remember actually laughing at a quote Sarri had, and it was something along the lines of, they asked Maurizio Sarri, who's responsible for bringing in these players. If you've watched Lazio this season, you wouldn't even really know that they signed somebody like Daichi Kamada on a free who can't get a sniff. Sarri doesn't seem to be a fan of Tati Castellanos. He barely plays Isaks in, even though he had a good performance against Bayern. And Sarri was asked, who's deciding what players are bought. And Sarri says, well, if I ask for player A and they tell me to pick between players C and D, it's not really me that's deciding who plays for the club, right? And I think ever since he said that, the relationship with Lotito kind of spun out of control. I thought Sarri was going to get sacked at the end of the season, but it seems he kind of stepped out the door himself. It wasn't a sacking, it was a resignation. Clearly, Sarri feels like there's nothing at all left for Lazio to play for this season. They were dumped out of the Champions League by Bayern. They currently sit ninth place in the Serie A. They're well off the top four. They don't even have a chance. It's 11 points now. At this point, I think their season is kind of over. They do have a Coppa Italia semifinal coming up against Juventus two-legged, but it seems like Sarri has wrote on his words saying that it's not even a competition he's interested in. I mean, he literally said that he wasn't interested in the Coppa Italia a couple weeks back. So it's sad for Lazio. I think this was a Lazio team that punched way above their weight last season, coming second place to Napoli, albeit with a gap of like 25 points it probably was by the end of the season. So not really a season where anybody can claim being second best, in my opinion. But it's a huge fall from grace on a Lazio side that finally seemed like they were going to cement themselves as the fourth best team in Italy. They lost Sergei Milinkovic-Savic. He left a hole about the size of he is. He was a fucking wall of a man, and he was a phenomenal player, somebody that I think Lazio was never going to really replace. But it seems like Maurizio Sarri feels like he didn't even have the chance to replace him. And that's probably where the downfall of this Lazio season began, was before it even started, in my opinion. What do you think, Gianluca?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think if you've been watching Lazio this year, the writing was always on the wall for Maurizio Sarri. I mean, they don't even... If you're familiar with Maurizio Sarri at all and you know his style of play, this Lazio team couldn't be further from that. I mean, they sit so far back. There's no movement in the ball. There's no speed to their play. They're just so lackluster and honestly boring. That's like my best way to describe them. The furthest from a Maurizio Sarri team they would ever be, and I just think it was about time. I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen sooner. I think the Bayern result probably bought him a little time, but I do think it's a little interesting that he stepped out on his own. I wonder how that's going to leave their management. I wonder if they were expecting it. I wonder if they were planning that they were going to sack him before the end of the season. I think logically the smart move would have been to wait till the end, but I think Maurizio Sarri is a man who knows his place, and I think he knew there was nothing else he could do with this team. They were about reaching the end of the rope with him, and it was about time for him. It'll be interesting to see if he goes anywhere. I think he's about ready to just kick it up and smoke cigars for the rest of his life. But
I know. I hope he does go somewhere. He's somebody that I've taken a liking to. I actually would have. I'm not gonna lie. If he replaced Stefano Pioli, I don't think I'd be too annoyed with that. I think Sarri's been really underrated. I mean, that Napoli side that he was coaching was arguably better than the one that just won the league. I thought they played unbelievable football. I didn't think I was going to see many teams play better football in my lifetime, to be honest. It's what got him to move to Chelsea, where, of course, he coached Jorginho into player in Europe for a season. He had Hazard turn up his best season statistically ever. He delivered a European trophy to Chelsea, and then off the back of that, he goes to Juventus and wins a Scudetto. I mean, Maurizio Sarri was kind of an elite football manager for a little while. A lot of people forget that, and people were kind of giving him shit a couple weeks ago, and Sarri, he doesn't know who he is, and he said, how many managers have won at Juventus since I left? Because Allegri hasn't. Maurizio Sarri was the last coach to win a Scudetto with Juventus, and we all know how poor Juventus have been to their standards since Sarri left the club. He was kind of made a scapegoat. I mean, he got to coach Ronaldo. I mean, I feel bad for Maurizio Sarri. I think he's had a really good career. He's somebody that was a banker, I think, up until the age of 55 or something like that. He was coaching the Serie D. Napoli gave him a chance, and he took it and ran with it. So somebody who I always liked, always appreciated. I hope we'll get another job. I was watching a Serie A podcast today, the Serie A Chronicles, with Patrick Kendrick, who's honestly my favorite commentator now. He commentates on some Serie A games, and they were saying they were interested if maybe Maurizio Sarri would have left a month ago. He would have been in for the Roma job and they were saying how Serie A that would have been. But there's actually a rule in the Serie A where you can't coach two teams in the same division in the same season. So either way, he'll have to wait before he's at the helm of another Serie A club. But I think he'll get another job. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he went back to Napoli either, personally. But we'll see. We can get into the football now. The first game I wanted to bring up was Bologna-Inter, a game that football-wise absolutely lived up to the hype. I don't know if you guys saw the game, but it was back and forth. Inter dominated the first half, and then Bologna dominated the second. The only difference was Bologna couldn't get their goal on the night. They had plenty of chances. Stefan Posch had a really good one, flashing across the face of goal. But yeah, it was kind of those It was another performance where, although Bologna had chances, Jens Sommer probably could have sat in a lawn chair for 88 minutes, and they would have been okay. But yeah, Inter's lead at the top grows even more off the back of Juventus' draw, which we'll get into later. But typical Inter win away from home, in my opinion. Not really too much to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was very intrigued going into this game to see how it would go, because obviously we know how well Bologna have been playing and how good of a coach Thiago Motta has been. And I felt like his tactical nous would have really matched up well to Inzaghi's team. And we saw that. I thought for a 1-0 game, I mean, this game was fantastic. If you're a real football nerd, this is definitely a game I would consider going back and watching, because it was just the pure quality for 90 minutes. It was great to watch. But I thought it was really cool to see the way that the goal came for Inter. It was from one center back to another, and I think that exemplifies Inzaghi's tactics and his style of play in this team. He has his center backs flying forward up the field, and it's an assist from one to the other. I mean, I don't think there's any team in the world where you see that happening. So I think it was just really cool to see. But like you said, it was a pretty typical Inter 1-0 away win. Something that they've been. I mean, I couldn't even tell you the last time they lost. Now it's pretty much. I don't even think they're going to lose till the end of the season at this point. It's kind of remarkable how well they've been playing. Their gap is 16 points now, I think, at the top. It's hard to imagine how it doesn't get bigger at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you mentioned the goal. It was a really good goal. It was an Alessandro Bastoni cross from, honestly, like 45 yards away to the back post to Bisek, who scored his first goal for Inter. So as much as I don't like them, it is a pretty cool storyline. Bastoni seems to be growing better and better every week. It's giving me hope for the summer in the Euros. I think he'll be a nailed starter by this point in Spalletti's Azzurri, but I'm sick of talking about how good Inter is every week, to be honest. We can move on to Juventus, who, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, dropped points again. They dropped points to Atalanta, a 2-2 draw. This was another really good game, and funny enough, it was Toon Koopmeiners with the brace. He's been the most heavily linked player in the Italian media to make the next move to Juventus in a classic Juventus poaching players from Serie A clubs, so it remains to be seen how that will play out. But it was an interesting result. Atalanta have had a lot of tough games. Obviously, they had a tough battle with Nate Sporting, and I thought it was going to be the perfect opportunity for Juventus to win and kind of get their form back on track, but it wasn't that at all. It was more drop points and kind of a tame performance.
Can I interject here about Koopmeiners, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
So I also saw. I know you said that he's linked to Juventus, but I saw that a United scout was actually at the game. They wanted to watch him play, and they're very interested in him too.
He's legit, dude. I don't know how much you've seen him, but I mean, he could do everything from taking penalties to scoring worldies. He scored a worldie in this game. I don't know if you guys saw the set piece routine that they had, but they kind of dished it off to him, and Koopmeiners wrapped his foot around it from about 25 yards and stuck it in the top corner. I think he can do everything. I think if he moved to the Premier League, he'd be well suited. I think he has the quality to play for a big team like United. Because he's always seems to be the player that pops up for Atalanta in the big games when they play big teams. I know he scored against Milan at the San Siro. He scored twice against Juventus away now, so he's a great player. That's it. I actually didn't even see that he was linked to United. That'd be a pretty cool signing.
Yeah, I saw him play a couple times, couple highlights here and there, and I think he's a pretty good player. So.
Oh yeah.
I know he's young too, so I was pretty excited to see a little.
Definitely more quality than Amrabat, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
But I was gonna say, I thought I actually thought Juventus played pretty good, and I think
Yeah,
that
me too.
the fact that they played so well and didn't come away with all 3 points tells you exactly where they are right now. Like
Yeah.
they are not very good. They're struggling. I mean, they miss sitters, they make terrible mistakes, and they're just not picking up their men defensively. I mean, yeah, it's a very clever free kick routine for Koopmeiners to score, but I think it's preventable. You know, I think a more inspired Juventus team steps forward and makes a block on that shot, and that's exactly what we didn't see in this game. And I think, like I said, I just think it's very exemplary of where they are right now. They can play as good as they want, and in the big games against the good teams, they're probably still not going to get the result.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a shame because there was a couple bright spots too in the game. McKennie, in particular, I think he had 2 assists. I don't remember him being really good. Chiesa had some good chances, but yeah, it seems like ever since I've been saying every podcast. I mean, ever since Allegri opened his mouth about being an underdog, they've been getting worse and worse results. I saw there was a point in the season where Juventus had 53 points and Inter had 52. Inter now have 75 and Juventus have 58. And the season is over, as far as I'm concerned. Milan have leapfrogged Juventus. We won't really talk about the Milan game. It was typical. But yeah, it's just another honestly bad result for Juventus at home. You'd expect them to beat anyone in the league, given their standard. But with that, I will touch on Milan a little bit. The only thing I wanted to say was Pulisic has been great. It's double-digit goals in all competitions now for Pulisic. I think it's the first time in my lifetime I've seen a right winger score more than 8 goals. Because up until now, I think the best right winger we ever had was Suso. He was my favorite player for a little while. But Pulisic has been great. It was no Leao. Pioli gave Okafor a chance. He didn't really do much with it, but typical Milan performance. I think we had too much for Empoli in the end, and Empoli side, who I know we were kind of excited about. They had dragged themselves out of the relegation fight, but they're kind of back in it, especially after last week losing to Cagliari. But yeah, I don't think we need to spend too much time on Milan. I don't know if you watched the game, Gianluca, but
No, I didn't really catch too much of the Milan game, but I think you're right. I mean, the most notable thing to mention here is Pulisic. I mean, he's been nothing short of incredible in my opinion for you guys this season.
Yeah.
Certainly someone I would like to have that style of player in Roma's front line. I mean, he just takes someone on. He doesn't stop running. It's quite enjoyable to watch. I think it's nice too. I think a lot of people were kind of surprised by the move to see him go from the Premier League to Serie A. And I don't think a lot of people expected him to do as well. I certainly didn't. I thought he would struggle a little bit, but it's been nice to see him perform as well as he has so far.
And stay fit.
Yeah, stay fit. And I think what impresses me the most is his work rate. I didn't realize how much. I mean, he has lungs. I mean, he tracks back. He's a part of every defense. I mean, there was a couple. I remember in this game there was a time where he was the last player sweeping up the ball and playing it back to Mike Magnan. So he's been a breath of fresh air. I think they nailed the transfer of Pulisic. It was exactly what we needed. I've been crying out for us to have any sort of presence on the right wing, and he's filled the role well. So I give him a lot of credit. He definitely changed my mind when we signed him. I thought that we could be fishing in ponds where there's better wingers, I would say. But yeah, Pulisic he's been great. And I don't know if you want to move into Roma now. I can hand it over to you.
Yeah, we'll go there. So yeah, I thought it was for me. Roma Fiorentina was a massive game for us. In terms of our hopes of making top 4 this season, I think we had to get a result. I was very confused when I saw the lineup from this game because De Rossi decided to go back to the back 3 again, but instead of playing with Angelino at left wing back, he decided to go with 2 inverted foots on either side. So he went with El Shaarawy at left wing back and Angelino at right wing back. Post game, he explained his reasoning for doing this was he wanted them to be able to come inside and play wall passes off of Dybala, off of Lukaku, but we didn't get the opportunity to do that, so it really didn't work. And we got honestly played off the pitch in the first half. I thought we were terrible for the first 45 minutes. Fiorentina deserved to go in front. They probably could have been in front by a couple more, in my opinion, by halftime. We were lucky to make it there only 1-0. And then in the second half, we saw a completely different Roma. De Rossi went right back to the back 4, and he even said it when he said he was going to the back 4. He knew right away, like, that's our best. The players like it the best. We play the best that way, and that's probably going to be the way to go moving forward. And it showed. I mean, we were so much better. We were instantly creating more chances. We had so much more going forward in attack. We were able to hold possession more. And that's how the goal came. It came from a ball to the box. There was a little bit of a scramble, and the ball pops up. And who but Houssem Aouar, who's done absolutely nothing all season, pops up with a vital goal for us, tied the game. We went behind again, and then Llorente, who has not scored at all for Roma since making his move over from Leeds, but he's been exemplary. I think he's been fantastic for us at the back. He finally popped up with a goal when we needed it most. The last kick of the game, literally. Stuck one in the top corner. A great finish for a striker. It was nice to see our two center backs link up on it too. A nice knockdown from Indica, and Llorente sniped the top corner off the crossbar. Terracciano had no chance, and I have to say, I am in love with Miles Svilar. What a fucking goalkeeper this kid is, man. He made an outrageous penalty save again in this game, and if he doesn't do that, I mean, we lose this game 3-1. We don't claim a point, and the whole outlook on our European race looks much different if he doesn't make that penalty save, in my opinion. So I got to give him a lot of credit. He read it perfectly. He got there, and he made a great save, pushed it away, and I think that really spurred a lot of confidence in the team to go on and grab a result here.
No, yeah, it was well said. I completely agree. I think I was expecting a little more from Roma, to be honest, especially after they smashed Brighton. In the midweek. Fiorentina are coming off the back of a very different result where they went away to Maccabi Haifa and drew 3-3. So I thought Fiorentina were going to be kind of leggy, kind of tired, but it was actually a pretty good result for Fiorentina, a point that they really needed if they want to stay in this race for a European spot again. It's looking like they have a real chance of getting a Conference League spot or a Europa League spot. But quickly before we go to Portugal, I want to talk about the other end of the table. And bring up Lecce and some other teams again who are absolutely entrenched in a dogfight of relegation. Udinese were kind of in it. They're still kind of in it, even after beating Lazio on Monday night 2-1 away to Lazio, which saw Sarri resign. But if you look at the table, it's only 4 points, separating 13th to 19th place. It is almost a 6-pointer every weekend from here on out. In the Serie A, so I'm excited. There's a lot of football to be played, but I can't even call it. I honestly have no idea. I have no idea who's going to get relegated. I mean, 2 weeks ago, it looked like Empoli were going to finish 10th, and now they're 17th, so I don't know what's going on. It's a circus down there.
Yeah, it's actually crazy because I feel like when we did our mid-season review, it felt like the three teams that were down there
set, right?
were pretty much bone set on all three of them were going to go down. It wasn't going to change. They might shift between 18th, 19th, and 20th, but it was going to stay those three teams. And now it's honestly like it's up. Other than Salernitana, anybody could go down. Like it changes every week, and like you said, it's actually insane. There's pretty much a relegation 6-pointer, at least one every weekend in Serie A. There was 2 this weekend, so I think the league to watch right now, if you're not watching the Premier League, is the relegation battle in Serie A, because what a fight it is down there. It's insane.
Yeah, I agree, and I look at somebody like Cagliari, and I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, the experience that Claudio Ranieri has. I mean, they got 2 massive results. They beat Empoli away last week. This weekend, it was a 4-2 win against Salernitana. They pulled themselves out of it. They have a 2-point gap between themselves and 18th. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. But with that being said, I think we're all set with Italy if we want to move to Portugal now.
Thank you for the call back. In Portugal, it was a bit of somewhat uninteresting weekend, but a little bit of implications as far as how teams are getting their ball rolling going into the Europa League fixtures coming this Thursday. That being said, if you like the Europa League and the Champions League, make sure you catch our video coming this weekend about those games. But as far as the big 3 in Portugal, we'll start with Porto. They got a 3-0 victory where they were looking to get a little steam going into the Arsenal game coming up this week where they have to go away. Just 3-0 away. Galeno, the man on form right now, the man on fire, probably on a lot of radars. Some big European clubs. Not someone who I would have picked out at the beginning of the season, but I can't lie, has been on fire in the Porto team that's is a little hit or miss sometimes. But he gets a goal and an assist at the weekend to Portimonense, who sometimes I argue is a little like Porto's B team, but we won't get into the technicalities there. But then Sporting Benfica also got 3 goals apiece in their games this weekend. I'll talk about Sporting first, who also played away to Aruca. At a slow opening of the game, honestly, I was a little bit worried. It wasn't overly comfortable. I think we had a good amount of possession. I think we played well. I wasn't worried in terms of us not playing well in the game. We just couldn't find the back of the net. We dominated the possession for a little bit, but then Aruca actually started to get control of the ball, which is a little bit worrying. But Sporting were pressuring the net. Man informed Gyökeres scored and assisted in this. It's now 45 goal contributions this season in something like 35 games played for Sporting, which is, I mean, unreal. If 37 games for Sporting, if the Portuguese league had the same coefficients as goals scored, he'd be in the race for the European Golden Boot. The man is on fire, which is unreal. If he doesn't get a move to this summer, I'll be surprised, but I would love to see him stay another season. But yeah, we scored 2 goals late to make it 3-0. And stay at the top of the table where we have a point clear of Benfica, 7 points clear of Porto, with a game at hand. It's been in the media a little bit. Porto fans like to make these little graphics that say that Benfica and Sporting have the harder fixtures the rest of the season, and they still believe they can get to the title. It remains to be seen if they have to do that. It's a big gap that they have to overcome. It's a bit of wishful thinking, but we'll see because Sporting still have to play Benfica and Porto, so it's going to be an interesting one. But I'll hand over to Jay, who I think had a more interesting game as far as implications, a lot of rotations. But Jay, walk us through that one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like you mentioned, a pretty big amount of rotations. One forced with Otamendi suspended, and I thought Tomas Araújo played fantastic. So he did really well. And we also basically replaced our whole front three, and dropped João Neves for some rest too. They played probably as well as they have all season. Marcos Leonardo finally gets his first start, scores again. So I think that probably locks up his spot for the rest of the season as a starting striker. At least I would hope so. That's what I'd like to see. But I think the biggest takeaway is that Kwaksu should be playing centrally as a 10, because the difference in play that we get with a real creative player, in terms of passing and playmaking, playing there instead of a winger in Rafa, who's really just a pace merchant. He's a talented player, skillful player, but that's his biggest strength. So I think it was great to see him play that way. He played well, and then after the match in the interview, he also said that's where he feels most comfortable and that's where he likes playing the most. So I'm interested to see where we go from there. Again, I think this was a bit reactionary from Schmidt. It doesn't look like a comfortable rotation. It feels like a bit forced, where a lot of these players haven't been getting time. Like Leonardo, I don't think I've seen the field in 3 or 4 games. Thiago Gouveia, I think, has maybe played 5 minutes in the last 6 or 7 games. So probably something that shouldn't be this way when we rotate, considering talent in this squad. But no, definitely a step in the right direction. I guess it all depends on what happens with the Rangers game in the lineup, whether we revert back to the same crap we've been doing with the same lineup and keeping players in that really shouldn't be, or if we kind of go back to basics and where players belong and all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how this rotation, this result, affects our future performances.
I'd like to add, I think, I mean, I was going back and forth with you on how much rotation is here, just based on names. I know players play in different positions. I think Kokshu deserves to play the 10, like you were saying. It does force Rafa out of a position that he's been playing a lot, and he's been playing pretty decently well, I think, because he contributes a lot going forward for you guys. But I'm surprised that Alvaro Fernandez, on loan from United for that left back position that you guys are struggling with, doesn't get a start. I mean, dude, granted, a great result, 3-1, right? But Estoril are a pretty piss poor team right now. I think they've gotten 1 point in their last 5, including this game. So it's like you have so much room. Benfica are going to, on paper, absurdly more talented than this team. So you have so much room to rotate, and they still don't start 2 true fullbacks in a game just to try to see how it works out. So I don't know. Maybe that's Schmidt's tactics. Maybe he doesn't like having two fullbacks in the team. I don't. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's more of a
interesting.
trust thing. I don't think he trusts Carreras for some reason. But yeah, I mean, even with the subs, when he came in, he played right back for Ba, and we had Murata playing left back again.
Right.
Which to me, I would have preferred Dumas Arujo shifting the whole back line to the right, putting Antonio Silva and Murata as center back and Carreras at left back again. So I don't know. It's like he almost doesn't fully have confidence in him, which was weird. But it makes sense. He's young, but I think the difference when he's in at left back, we have a true left back, a true right back. The way they play and interact with the winger is insane compared to when we have somebody else.
Right.
You know what though? Too, it's got to be pretty annoying because the only way he's going to build his confidence and trust in the manager is if he plays.
Yep.
Right.
And if you don't play him, he's never going to get the chance to do that.
Yeah, you have to play people out of position, and you have to play people on the wrong side and play them in an uncomfortable spot to keep him off the bench for you to feel comfortable as a coach, or you have to let him play so that he can gain his confidence and be good enough. So I mean, considering the amount of rotation, I probably won't say that this was a good opportunity for it, but I think there shouldn't have been the need for this much rotation. This would have been a game where he would have benefited from playing.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, the summary of Portugal this weekend was honestly getting the ball rolling, like I mentioned, for the Europa League matches.
Can I add something real quick?
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah.
Something cool I saw from the Braga game, actually, with the referee. He disallowed a goal with VAR, the Bonza goal, and I thought it was kind of cool. They used the stadium announcement for the referee to explain his decision. I question why we don't see that more often because I thought it was kind of refreshing. I know that was something we saw a lot in the Women's World Cup, and I thought it was something that they were going to be bringing along and moving forward with, but we really haven't seen that. But I thought it was cool to see that in a top 5 league that they were doing that with the Braga game.
Yeah, so funnily enough, they also did it in the Benfica game and somehow didn't reverse a Stonewall penalty. And it's just, now we just get to laugh at them giving their reasoning for how bad of a decision they just made.
Yeah, I'll speak on the light side of that. Your point, G, on the fact that I think it was really cool. It was a historical moment in terms of the game for that to happen. If you guys didn't see it, you can check it out. Look up the Braga Rio Ave game and look up the Bonza disallowed goal. The referee, like an NFL player, like a NFL referee would, did an announcement over the intercom explaining that the Bonza was in an offside position at the time the ball was struck, and that's why they decided that that the goal was going to be canceled and disallowed. So it was cool because the crowd. It's funny because I think even the Braga fans, who obviously were disappointed that the goal doesn't go in, and it was a world-class goal too. I don't know if you saw the goal, but
I did see it. It was an overhead. Yeah.
So it was actually. I wish it almost would have stood because it would have been one of the goals of the season. But even though the Braga fans obviously disappointed, they don't get the goal or the result actually on the day. Everybody was cheering pretty much because it is a step in the right direction, I think, in terms of open communication between the referees and the fans, which at the end of the day is, I mean, that's what the sport's about. I say that every single week, that this sport doesn't exist without the fans. So it was a welcome sign, and I think they're trying it and testing it, so I hope it somewhat continues. We don't want to spend too much, explaining for like 3 minutes why the call is being made, just something quick, a few words.
I thought it was perfect, though, the way he did it.
Yeah, it was well done. Yeah, I agree. Definitely well done. I'm glad you brought that up. I almost forgot about that piece. But yeah, like I was saying, so Sporting look ahead to play Atalanta, who obviously drew, like our Italians were just explaining to us. So it's going to be a fun game. I think that head-to-head is going to be a good one. I think those tactics match up great. Benfica get the ball rolling, trying to make up for their somewhat scrappy game last time out to Rangers. Having to go to Scotland is going to be a tough one. And then, of course, Porto at the time of recording are duking out an exciting fixture. We're now in the second half of extra time. So if you're watching this and you didn't watch the Arsenal-Porto game, first off, thank you. But you should definitely go watch the highlights of that one because it's been fun so far. So we'll get back to you later this week on how that game ends.
I'm actually so mad because the Napoli game ended and I just assumed Arsenal won. And then you said, when we moved to Portugal and you said Porto, I said, oh, fuck. I said, I wonder if they're still playing. I'm like, damn it, they are playing. I missed the whole first half extra time. Or whatever.
That being said, we'll wrap up our episode going to the Bundesliga and La Liga, where we had a couple of straightforward victories, but a couple ones to talk about. In the Bundesliga, Bayern continue trying to gain their identity back after beating up Lazio last week in the Champions League and moving on in that season. They're trying to regain a little bit of the footing in the Bundesliga title. I think it's done and dusted as far as the title goes, but they're at least trying to keep a little bit of their respect, being like 18-year holders of the trophy. Smashing Mainz 8-1. I mean, what an absolute dismantling in that game. A couple other results in the league. Bayer Leverkusen keep their unbeaten streak alive, winning 2-1 against Wolfsburg. 2-0 against Wolfsburg, sorry. And then we also saw Stuttgart, Leipzig, Dortmund, and Frankfurt all getting wins at the weekend as well, which means the top six did not change this weekend. So Leverkusen still big favorites. Bayern trying to get a little bit of that. Anybody catch any of those games and had any thoughts on any of those games?
I did. Well, first things first, Sancho scored his first goal this weekend for Dortmund. Pretty good goal, I'll say, but it still remains to be seen if he's going to take a step forward from this goal and kick on and bring his performances forward. I personally don't think so, but I think it's a good sign to see him score. Something we've definitely been clowning him about here for the last few weeks now that he hasn't scored. He's been acting like a little girl about it ever since. But
He's still acting like a girl, G. Did you see what he said?
Oh, I know.
He said Ten Hag ruined his career, completely stunted his career. That's what he said. Because he can't show up to training on time and he can't get match fit. That's all Ten Hag's fault.
Everybody's fault but his own.
Yep, always.
And I want to say, Harry Kane is unbelievable. I know he's playing in the Bundesliga now, and it's obviously not up to the standard of the Premier League. I think that's pretty easy to say, but you cannot discount the rate at which he is scoring goals right now. I mean, he scored his fourth hat-trick of the season. He's the first Bundesliga player to do that. I think only Lewandowski at this point has ever scored more goals after 26 matches or 25 matches that they've played in the Bundesliga. And he's only like 1 or 2 goals behind him. I think Lewandowski had 32 at this point. Harry Kane's on 30, which is just absolutely insane. And I think that's kind of unfortunate for Serie Guirassy that Harry Kane's been doing so well, because Serie Guirassy's been scoring at an unbelievable rate too. And he scored again this weekend as well, and he's just really not getting any credit for it because Harry Kane just can't stop scoring.
Yeah, even Victor Boniface is as if he hasn't even played a game this season. We've all forgotten about him, given how well Leverkusen's been playing in his absence. Somebody I actually wanted to bring up that didn't score was Sané. I mean, what's wrong with Leroy Sané? It was an 8-goal thrashing. He didn't get a goal or an assist. He hasn't scored since October, but it's just pointing fun at this point, trying to make light of a league that I find to be incredibly boring and is already over. So hats off to Leverkusen. They did it again. Grimaldo on the score sheet again. I mean, I don't know what this guy is. I don't know if there's something special in the left back water he's drinking, but I mean, he's been unbelievable.
It's crazy because I didn't think he would really impress me to be like he had such another level to get to.
Right.
With being at Benfica, scoring, he was due a worldie every year, at least, and I feel like he's had 2 or 3 already this year.
Yeah.
And then the assist
he had this weekend, it pretty much defines him this season. It was unbelievable. He had incredible touch to beat the defender, and he played in a pinpoint ball on a dime right for them to score. I mean, it was Grimaldo in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, that free flow attack that they play, and the freedom he has as a wing back rather than a fullback with a bit more defensive responsibility, I think just suits him perfectly.
Yeah, and Goretzka had a bit of a game too, with 2 goals and 2 assists. So probably a couple Bayern representatives when we get to our 5-a-side. After one more league where we go to Spain, where we had a couple of results. Barcelona 1-0 to Mallorca. Lamine Yamal getting on the score sheet there. Atletico Madrid dropped points when they went away to Cadiz. Atletico Madrid, probably the worst of the top 4 teams in Spain, and just can't get it done. Even despite probably 2 months ago, we thought they were on a little bit of an up, but definitely not anymore. Girona 2-0, trying to get back a little bit of the credit of the season that they've been having. And then, of course, Real Madrid also smoked Celta Vigo 4-0. A couple other results I'm sure you guys might want to get to across the league, but I'll give you guys the floor on thoughts on La Liga this weekend.
Yeah, well, for me, I think the most notable result for me completely has to be Atletico Madrid. I mean, they away from home this season, they've been horrific. If you look at the table just in away games, Atletico Madrid sit 8th, well out of Europe, well out of anything worth playing for. And I think that it's really starting to undo their season now because Athletic Bilbao have been playing so well. They picked up 3 points again this weekend. Nico Williams bagged another assist. I just think it's kind of incredible actually that Atletico Madrid have taken such a step back because, like you said, they were playing so good at the beginning of the season, and now it almost feels like they're too reliant on Griezmann. That if he's not there, it's almost like they can't really produce anything. I mean, Morata's been missing chances left and right. Depay's doing flips instead of kicking the ball. I mean, I don't really know what's going on in their attack. And when you can't score goals, you can't win games. And they defensively have not been the Atletico Madrid that we've known and loved over the last few years. They don't really play with that dark art style that we're used to. So I just think it's kind of sad almost to see this Diego Simeone identity kind of falling away from this Atletico Madrid team.
Yeah, and they're doing it at the absolute worst time in the season. We speak of this on the eve of their Champions League clash with Inter coming up tomorrow on day of recording. So it's a really bad time for Atletico to be in the rut that they're in. And, I mean, if you look on paper and see that Cadiz beat them 2-0 before a Champions League match, you might have thought, all right, well, maybe Simeone is kind of rotated his squad, but that really wasn't the story at all. I mean, it's a pretty full-strength 11. I think it's an 11 that will be similar to the one that gets fielded tomorrow versus Inter. The only positive is that at least they host Inter this time around. Obviously, like you say, Gianluca, their away form has been terrible, but to speak about what they're doing in La Liga, I mean, they kind of been doing nothing the last couple weeks, and yeah, Athletic Bilbao are right there breathing down their neck. It was something that I kind of hinted at might happen last podcast. And it seems to be coming true because it's now only a 2-point gap between them. So, I mean, this season might get even worse come the end of March.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
And I mean, they lost to a Cadiz side who literally have not won since September 1st, round 4 in La Liga. So I think that tells you just about exactly where they are right now. They are really struggling for results on all fronts.
Yeah, I think Atletico Madrid at this point it's really a result of just poor club management, in my opinion. Because if we look back to the 2014 when they were in the Champions League final, they had a run of about the next 4 to 5 years where they were one of the best teams in the world.
Yep,
and that tactic that Simeone would use with that defensive stuff was insane. And they just weren't able to replicate it with the players that came in after those guys. I don't think they ever got another competent center back like a Diego Godin, and especially after Jimenez left. So, I mean, they definitely fell off significantly in the talent department, and then with the money spent with players like João Felix, which I think was a horrible decision. And then also with like Morata, was the money launderer in football, with all his transfer fees and stuff like that. It's just they haven't been able to pull off a significant signing apart from João Felix, in my opinion, that was worthy of playing for a top team. But I just don't think João Felix fits their mold. So I was just spend all that money on a player that isn't going to fit the team and fit what got you to this position, I think was odd.
Right.
Yeah, one thing, I mean, we don't always want to see managers get sacked. You know, we talk about always giving managers a chance, but it just surprises me because, that Diego Simeone ball, you know, locking it up, park at the bus, it did wonders for Atletico Madrid for a bit of an era that they had, like you mentioned. But I'm surprised that it just never, split ways after they started to slowly decline. You know what I mean? Like just a natural, once his contract expired, let it go, don't extend, you know, let's move on, part ways, build something else. And they just held on, and it just feels like you said, Jay, poor decisions in the upper echelons of Atletico Madrid that they've held on now for too long. And it's almost a bit of a toxic relationship at this point where they can't split up. And I mean, where would you even see Diego Simeone at another club? At this point, it's only Atleti that I feel like would give him the chance to play the way he likes to play. You'd have to change his whole system, in my opinion.
I think he would only fit Serie other than La Liga.
I was going to say there's a vacancy as recent as today, and former Lazio player himself too, Simeone. It could be a job that Maybe
Yeah.
Lautito puts his hands in his pocket and forks over some money for it, because I think he's still the highest paid coach in the world, which is unbelievable. But it is sad because Simeone has delivered some memorable Champions League nights, some memorable Champions League results. But I think it's the first time really in his tenure that Atletico have taken steps backward and have actually regressed. At least to the naked eye. So it's too bad. But there were a couple other results in La Liga that I think we should talk about. Obviously, Real Madrid were full their victors. Arda Güler scored his first goal. Very nice to see. There was a couple young goal scorers around the league. Even Lamine Yamal popping up and scoring a goal. I know we'll talk more in depth about him when we break down the Champions League game, but he was one of the better players on the pitch today, even against Napoli. And I remember saying to you guys earlier, I mean, he's such the real deal. I think he might be one of the best teenagers to ever play the game. He's unbelievable. He's electric. It's crazy how much Barca looks for him too in attack. I hope it's not going to be too much on the kids' shoulders. I mean, we feel like we say this every week with some of the youngsters that have been playing for Barca and have been getting injured from just being oversaturated with game time. But yeah, the big teams won. I mean, Girona's stab at La Liga, I guess, is still alive. I mean, it's a 7-point gap, but it probably is done and dusted by this point.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on Real Madrid, they do so without Jude after all that controversy that we talked about last week being suspended. So it's a good sign for them because they had a couple games, I think, in succession where they didn't look their best version of themselves. Obviously, getting through in the Champions League on only 1-0 on aggregate, 2-1 on aggregate, I should say, after the drawing Valencia with the drama last week. So it's good that they got back to a big score line without their talisman. So in terms of their season, and of course in the Girona game, Savio, who's a man that's going to City in the summer, gets on the score sheet with 15 goal contributions in the season. So it's actually going to be interesting to see if Guardiola is at City. I'm assuming he will be, but if Guardiola starts him like a Doku right away, or if he gets loaned out or gets sat the bench for a while. So we'll have to remain to see that. But now with all the leagues wrapped up, it's now time for us to do our five-a-side. I know we're a little bit distracted. You'll know at the time of watching this that Porto and Arsenal did go into penalties. We'll try to keep it focused and make it a good one for you guys, make it quick. But G, as usual, we are picking a five-a-side of a goalkeeper, a defender, a midfielder, a forward, and a flex position of the outfield positions. G being our resident goalkeeper, it is now your turn to shine a bit, and I think you might have a couple names that I could predict, but I'll give you the chance to say.
I do. I have a couple. You could probably predict two of them. The third one you might not expect. But I thought Onana definitely deserves a shout as one of the three. Fantastic game. He's definitely turned his United career around, I think. Since returning from AFCON, he's looked much, much better, much more improved, much more confident, much less emotional, which I said was probably his detriment in the first half of his Man United career so far. So I think this performance against Everton kind of defines the fact that he's kind of made a step forward, in my opinion. The other player I'm going to shout is none other than my own Miles Vilar. I feel like this is the fourth week in a row that I'm shouting him out. He's made more world-class saves again, saved another penalty, massive penalty save. Like I said, got a huge point for us. And the third goalkeeper I'm going to shout out is Rajkovic, the Mallorca goalkeeper, because against Barcelona, he was unbelievable for 75 minutes until Lamine Yamal scored a peach of a goal on him that he was never going to save. But he made some unbelievable saves in this game. He saved the penalty from Gundogan in the first half. Just unlucky, really, did not get the clean sheet in the game and get a point from Mallorca because his performance deserved a point, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't have a clear-cut answer for you this week. I'm going to let you guys debate on the pick, but I think there's three goalkeepers that deserve a shout this week.
I think it's got to be Onana. I'll save Patrick his breath. I mean, he made a bunch of saves in the game, and I agree. I think Onana's probably the main reason that United's been on this little run of form. He's growing in confidence ever since he returned from the AFCON, like you said, and I think he's been kind of a rock again. I think he's been able to instill confidence in the team. It's a couple really good performances in a row. I know we were talking about how he conceded 3 goals in the Manchester derby, but I mean, he was a star, to be honest, despite being on the losing side. So I'm with Onana.
Yeah, I can't argue, and I'm sure Pat won't argue either. I don't know if Jay has any arguments against it, but I think Onana is a good shout for keeper this week. I know your Vilar makes a penalty save, G, but yeah, to come back, especially getting thrashed by City last week, to facing a lot of pressure from Everton, like Pat was mentioning earlier. Everton were on the front foot for a lot of part of that game, so it was a good performance from him. For defender shouts, Patrick, I know you usually have the honors. I don't know if you have any names off the top of your head you want to give, or if anybody else, please.
Yeah, I have Van Dijk for his wonderful performance. I have Ben White for his 2 assists, and I also have Mr. Jan Bisek from the Inter squad. Sorry if I butchered that last name, but kind of made an impact this year. So he's playing good. He got a goal over the weekend, 1-0 win, match winner. So those are my 3 picks, but I'm leaning towards Ben White.
Yeah, I think I was going to say Ben White too. It's funny because the 2 names that popped in my head too were Ben White and Bisek. So I'm good for Ben White to make it in.
Are you sure? You sound like you hesitated.
No, I promise.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ben White's an easy shout. He was so good going down. Actually, I got to be honest with you. It's kind of surprised me a little bit. He's not someone I thought when he was signed at Arsenal that he could really play that right back role and fly forward and be so productive in providing assists and playing balls into the box. But I mean, he did great this weekend, and I think he definitely gets the shout from me.
Yeah, I think overall Ben White gets a shout from me too. But I actually, in the Inter game, I actually kind of like Bastoni for the shout. I'm still going to give Ben White my pick for the 5-a-side, but I think Bastoni is this like really good up and coming. I know Ange, being a Milan fan himself, it's not easy for him to talk highly about an Inter player, but I'm sure he can agree that Bastoni is a fantastic modern day center back, which typically is in that libero role or that John Stones role, as many might talk about, and he played really well, obviously getting the assist, the libero being a more creative defender than what you would normally expect, and obviously he made that point on the day. But yeah, I think Ben White would be the perfect fit for our 5-a-side this week. As far as midfielders go, we mentioned a couple, and one of the last leagues we talked about in Bundesliga, obviously Goretzka had 4 goal contributions, but there might be a different Bayern player representing us. I don't know if you guys have a couple more shouts. I think there was a couple decent midfield performances like Endo and others, but I'll give you guys the opportunity to throw some names out there.
Yeah, there was a shit ton of good midfielder performances this weekend. To be honest, I really want to shout out Coop Miners again. I thought he was a linchpin in the Atalanta team as he always is, and Endo had a good performance. But I know it's easy. It might sound easy to say this because McAllister scored the goal, but I think McAllister looked like elite in that game. I think it was one of the first games I've watched. I mean, maybe I need to pay more attention to McAllister, but that was the word I was thinking when I watched him, was just elite. His movements, his tracking back, some of the passes that he was picking in the game, I felt like everything was kind of flowing through him, and it's not something that you usually can say from a Liverpool midfielder. I think when you watch Liverpool play, the focus is usually on the front 3, but it really was the midfield that won them the game, in my opinion. I think they kind of stomped out City's attackers, like Patrick was saying, with Endo, and going forward, I thought McAllister was excellent, so I'd be fine if it was McAllister or Endo, but I wanted to give some light to Coop Miners again, too.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, please.
I think it's between Coop Miners and McAllister, personally. I know Endo does fantastic defensively, but you're right, Ange. I think just the spaces that McAllister occupies and where he picks up the ball and the pressure that he brings on himself and then releases to allow more space for the players in behind, I think it's just superb. There's not many players that can do that.
I have a kind of a weird shout. I don't really mind any of the shouts that we pick, but I wanted to highlight a game that we did not talk about. Bournemouth Sheffield, woo, big sleeper of a game. But that kid, I watched, like, because I usually go through and watch the highlights of the smaller games just because while I eat. iPad kid. That Dango Artara had a goal and an assist at half. Like, they suffered him at halftime goal assist to get him back. It was pretty nuts. So
that's dope.
I wanted to shout him out, too. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's sick.
Another name that actually we didn't get to mention earlier when I briefly mentioned the game, but Angie, you had thrown a stat out there. Cole Palmer getting a goal and an assist this weekend, making him having the most goal contributions in Europe for an under 23. So obviously a hell of a game from him. Obviously sees Chelsea win desperately when they needed it against Newcastle. So that's another shot. But I think the Liverpool City game being such a dramatic game at the weekend with so much implications, that deserves to be a player in that. And I think McAllister's, for me, is rightfully deserving of that shout in that game. if we
I
have no
agree.
objections for that. And then we have a couple of potential forwards that could go in at the forward position, but I think one is pretty clear cut. We already hinted at it a couple times already in this discussion, but Harry Kane, obviously, with a hat trick and an assist as well. So that's 4 goal contributions and an absolute dismantling and an 8-1 victory. I don't think there's many players that could take that credit for him unless you guys have a couple shouts.
No, the only other player I wanted to highlight was Kyungmin's son, but he does a lot of his damage when Aston Villa's down a man, so I think it's got to be
exactly why I didn't mention him.
it's got to be Harry Kane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Harry Kane gets it without even a second think about it. But that opens up our flex. I think our flex might have to be a midfielder, as we named so many of them. Does anybody feel so strongly that a player needs to get in this team that they want to throw their name at a flex, or is this a really tough decision for you guys?
I think Goretzka walks into the team, honestly.
I was actually gonna pick Musiala over Goretzka. I thought Musiala was unstoppable. I mean, there's some times when he picks up the ball against Mainz where he takes on 3-4 guys and makes them miss like it's nothing. I'm so impressed with that kid. Honestly, every time I watch him play, he is unbelievable. And he was just so good in that game. I know Goretzka has 2 goals and 2 assists, but I thought Musiala was far more impressive in my opinion.
That ball, I don't know if you saw the ball to Gnabry that Goretzka played.
Yeah, it was
gorgeous. It was, I don't know, it was one of the best passes I've seen in the last couple of weeks. I was thoroughly impressed. That's my reason behind the pick.
Yeah, I have Goretzka too, to be honest.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Musiala has been a little bit quiet and under the radar because he hasn't been on getting as much onto the score sheet as he has at different parts of this season. But yeah, I think on this game week, Goretzka is undoubtedly the second best player in that Bayern team. So he fits into our flex, which means we round out our 5-a-side with Onana in net, Ben White in the Arsenal game, McAllister from the Liverpool City game, and then we have Harry Kane and Goretzka from the big Bayern smashing this weekend to round out our 5-a-side. Make sure you're keeping up with all of our videos. Obviously, we were just mentioning in this video the Porto Arsenal game, which you have to make sure you check the result and check out what we have to say about that later this week. Keep up with us on our social medias as we post little clips and highlights from all of our big breakdowns. And of course, keep on being the son of a pitch.